Hey guys, just a quick one before you listen. Most of you guys aren't subscribed, so please help this new channel grow. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. The sun was sinking below the horizon as I continued my solo drive down the desolate highway. Shadows stretched across the cracked asphalt, swallowed up by the dense forest lining both sides of the road. I was still a few hours out from my planned stop for the night, eyes strained and heavy in the fading light. Up ahead, a faded billboard emerged from the gloom, advertising a motel at the next exit. I made a mental note, eager for a hot meal and soft bed after a long day behind the wheel. That's when a flash of crimson caught my eye. I instinctively eased off the gas, squinting into the trees. There, on a narrow dirt road carved between the woods, was a man dressed all in red. In the dusk, details were hard to make out, but the vivid shades stood out starkly from the muted greens and browns of the forest. He was walking with purpose, back rigid, disappearing into the shadows between the trees. A chill ran down my spine despite the heat blasting from the vents. I shivered, gripping the steering wheel tightly as I continued driving. Who was he? What was he doing out here alone as night descended? The isolation of these woods and roads meandered through my thoughts. No houses or buildings were visible aside from the distant billboard. It would be dangerously easy to get lost out here after dark for an unfamiliar traveler. The man clearly knew where he was going, slipping seamlessly into the forest's depths. Maybe he lived in a remote cabin, buffered from the outside world by acres of wilderness. Maybe he took this same winding path through the trees each evening. But logic couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. Something about the way he had melted into the shadows unsettled me in a way I couldn't pinpoint. I drove the next few miles on high alert, constantly checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the man in red reappear behind me on the deserted road. I flinched at every snapping branch and rustling bush, nerves frayed by isolation and creeping darkness. The shadows seemed to lengthen, the dense forest crowding closer, as I white-knuckled the steering wheel. When a deer abruptly darted across the asphalt, I yelled out in alarm and wrenched the wheel violently to avoid a collision. Heart pounding, I righted the sedan and kept driving, blasting the music in an effort to drown out the eerie noises of the forest at night. By the time the motel's flickering vacancy sign emerged from the gloom, my shoulders ached from tension. I pulled quickly into the empty parking lot, fetching my overnight bag from the trunk with shaky hands. Part of me was tempted to turn around and retrace my route, searching for any sign of the man in red. Make sure he was all right alone out here after the long, darkening night enveloped the woods. But common sense won out. I was in no shape to go wandering blindly into the forest at this hour. In my musty but clean room, I quickly showered, rinsing off the day's travel. As hot water cascaded over sore muscles, my mind kept returning to that brief sighting. Something about the way he disappeared so seamlessly into the trees rattled me. I tried to shrug it off as an overactive imagination fueled by isolation and wariness. Clean and exhausted, I collapsed into bed, drifting quickly into uneasy dreams. I was back on that lonesome stretch of highway, peering desperately into the gloom for any hint of red. But the forest remained still, sighing branches obscuring any traces of the mysterious stranger. I awoke the next morning disoriented, pale sunlight filtering through grimy curtains. After 2 cups of bitter complimentary coffee, I began loading up the car, eager to put distance between myself and this place. As I pulled out of the motel parking lot, I firmly pushed any lingering unease from my mind. It was a new day, brimming with possibility. I had places to be, family eagerly awaiting my arrival. No time for flights of fancy or paranoia. The morning sun warmed the highway as I drove, casting the dense forest in a softer, more welcoming light. Birdsong filled the air, a far cry from the isolate noises that had scored the previous night's drive. The farther I traveled from last night's brief, unnerving encounter, the more absurd my fright seemed in the comforting light of day. Soon I would be wrapped in the arms of loved ones I hadn't seen for months. Already the mysterious man in red felt like a distant memory, too surreal to exist outside of shadows and imagination. Just another strange travel story to recount later over drinks. I turned the radio up, humming along off-key. The highway stretched onward before me, sunlight glinting off cracked asphalt, snaking through the countryside. My unease had vanished with the night, left behind in the darkness, along with my own reluctance to continue this necessary journey. I drove on, looking ahead to brighter horizons after leaving behind that brief, unsettling sight. Just one of those odd moments on the lonesome open road you later recount with a shiver and a laugh. A blip in the rear view mirror, disappearing farther behind me with each passing mile. This past weekend was supposed to be a fun getaway with my buddies Tom and Dan, a chance to head upstate and go camping before our college finals started. We were all stressed from classes and needed a break, so we decided to head to the mountains where we could relax and enjoy nature for a couple days. I had packed up my old reliable Camry the night before with all our gear, tents, sleeping bags, cooler, the works. Tom and Dan came over bright and early Saturday morning, and we loaded their bags in as well. The weather was perfect for a drive, sunny and mild, and we were all grinning with anticipation for the trip. With snacks and tunes queued up, we hit the road feeling carefree and excited. The first couple hours passed smoothly as we left the city behind. We laughed and joked around, playing stupid road trip games to pass the time. It felt great to just be three friends, enjoying a mini adventure together. No schoolwork, exams, or jobs to worry about for the next 48 hours. Around the 2-hour mark, though, my car started making some weird noises. It sputtered a bit, so I pulled off at the next exit to check it out. We popped the hood, not that any of us really knew anything about cars. Just three 20-something guys staring blankly at an engine. No clue what was wrong. There wasn't much around at that exit, just woods lining the rural highway. No gas stations or mechanics as far as the eye could see. I spotted an ancient-looking garage a ways down the road, but it clearly hadn't been open in years. Rusty pumps out front and weeds growing everywhere. With no options for help, we debated trying to call a AAA or keep driving to the next town and hope the car held up. But our cells weren't getting any service out there in the sticks. The closest town was about 40 miles up the highway, according to the map. It seemed risky to keep going, but better than just sitting there stranded. So we hopped back in the Camry, and I babied the gas pedal, trying to keep strain off the engine. It sputtered a bit, but kept going, until about 10 miles later when steam started pouring from the hood and the engine cut out altogether. Luckily, I was able to pull onto the shoulder just as it died. There we sat on a narrow 2-lane road surrounded by dense forest on both sides. The sun was just starting to set, shadows stretching across the pavement. With the car off, it got eerily quiet outside. No more music or AC humming, just the faint rustle of leaves in the woods. The guys and I felt uneasy standing there as dusk settled in and darkness crept closer. The silence weighed heavy after hours of driving and blasting tunes. No signs of life out there at all. No traffic on the road, no crickets or birds calling, just the wind whispering faintly through the trees. We debated trying to walk to find help or continue waiting for a car to pass, but neither option seemed smart. We had no idea how far the next town was or what dangers lurked in those woods. That's when the first scream pierced the silence. A blood-curdling, almost primal-sounding scream echoing from the forest across the highway. The hairs on my neck stood straight up as we all froze. More screams followed, clearly human, but with an unnerving animalistic quality. My mind started spiraling, thinking what could be making those chilling sounds as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed before my eyes. Tom and Dan shouted to get back in the car and lock the doors. But I pointed out we were sitting ducks stranded there if something sinister lurked in those dark woods. Only the flimsy frame of my old Camry separated us from being prey. The screams continued, drifting through the trees and seeming to move around. Multiple voices rang out, men and women, young and old. A whole family of deranged hillbillies attacking people. Some backwoods clan of cannibals or sacrificers. My imagination took me to darker places still. Demons unleashed in the forest. A gateway to hell opened up. Evil creatures not of this earth coming out at night to terrorize any poor soul stuck on this highway. I couldn't stand there listening to those cries any longer. I had to know what was out there. I grabbed our little hatchet from the trunk, the only thing resembling a weapon we had. Tom and Dan called me crazy, begging me not to go out there as the sun slipped below the horizon and the forest went dark. But the screams were getting louder, closer. I told my friends to wait by the car while I checked it out. Heart pounding, I crossed the lonely highway, the pavement still radiating the day's warmth. The tree line loomed about 50 feet in. I could just make out a thin footpath leading into the woods. Taking a deep breath to steady my nerves, I stepped off the road into the underbrush. The forest shadows enveloped me immediately, like walking into a black void after the last faint light of dusk. The screams had ceased, leaving an unnerving silence. I clutched the hatchet tightly, ready to swing at the first hint of movement. Moving slowly to let my eyes adjust, I scanned for any sign of life. But nothing jumped out. No twigs snapping, no rustling leaves. Just my own footsteps crunching lightly on the dirt path. Finally, the tight trail opened into a small moonlit clearing. In the center stood a circular stone structure, some kind of old well, about 3 feet high. Just as I stepped forward, the screams erupted again, piercing the silence. They echoed loudly from inside the well, the stones carrying the sounds like an amphitheater. I slowly backed away, the whispers clawing at me as I retreated blindly towards where I thought the path was. Stumbling over fallen logs and stones, I pushed through narrow gaps between twisted branches that seemed to reach out and grab me as I squeezed past. The well's whispers clung like cobwebs, following me through the woods. Finally, I stumbled out onto the road, waving my arms wildly to get my friends' attention. Their worried faces sagged with relief when they saw me emerge from the trees unharmed. I told them about the well and the chilling screams and whispers within. None of us wanted to spend another moment on that road. We gathered what supplies we could manage and started walking, hoping to flag someone down. The woods stood silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched from the shadows. Something dwelled in there that I never wanted to encounter again. After what felt like hours, we managed to flag down a passing pickup truck, and the kindly older man gave us a ride to the next town. We made it to safety, but I'll never forget that night on the highway and the horrors that came out of the woods. It definitely cured any desire I had to go camping again. I'm just grateful we all made it out in one piece. Last summer, I decided I needed a little road trip getaway. Just a few days to myself, to see some new places and clear my head. I packed up my reliable car, nothing fancy, but great on gas and dependable on long drives. Into the trunk went my suitcase and a cooler with sandwiches and drinks to enjoy during the journey. As an afterthought, I grabbed my pepper spray too, attaching it to my keychain just in case. In the passenger seat, I put my purse and a pillow for comfort. I figured I'd drive for a full day and find a hotel when I got tired. The drive started out great, cruising with the windows down and music blasting. The weather was perfect, sunny and mild. I was really looking forward to exploring some small towns and trying local restaurants. By lunchtime, I had made it a few states away and decided to stop at a quaint diner I spotted from the highway. It reminded me of the cozy cafes my grandmother and I would visit when I was young. Inside, the booths were edged with shiny chrome, and a friendly older waitress led me to a table by the window. I ordered a club sandwich with fries and a chocolate milkshake. The food was delicious and really hit the spot after hours of driving. Feeling refreshed, I used the restroom and then headed back out to my car, ready to get some more miles under my belt. I drove for another 3 hours before deciding to find a place to turn in for the night. At a highway rest stop, I consulted my phone maps and located a motel with good reviews not too far away. By this point, dusk was settling in, and I was getting drowsy behind the wheel. At the motel, I checked in at the office and got directions to my room on the ground floor in the back corner. Dragging my suitcase across the parking lot, I let myself into the musty but tidy room and double-checked that the door locked securely. Feeling grimy from travel, I decided to take a quick shower before bed. The hot water revived me, but as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was out like a light. Sometime in the pitch black of early morning, I awoke with a start at the sound of loud banging. Disoriented, it took me a minute to realize someone was pounding on my door. Adrenaline coursing, I flew out of bed and grabbed my pepper spray in one hand and my phone in the other. The banging stopped abruptly, but I huddled in the corner, afraid to move or even breathe. Who could possibly be trying to get into my room at this hour? I dialed 911, but didn't hit send yet, waiting to hear if the noise started up again. After what felt like an eternity of silence, I finally found the courage to tiptoe over and look through the peephole. Nothing but empty darkness outside. Still shaken, I spent the rest of the night sitting up wide awake watching bad cable TV with the volume low so I could hear any other sounds. Morning sunlight filtering in through the curtains finally allowed me to breathe again. A new desk clerk was working and looked baffled when I asked about the person banging on my door. He said no other guests had complained, and it was likely just someone confused or drunk. Still, I wasted no time tossing my stuff back in the car and hitting the road again. I decided not to let it ruin my trip, probably just a drunk person mistaking my room. I drove for hours that day, stopping only quickly for food and gas, and then getting right back in the car. By dusk, I was road weary, but pressed on, hoping to cover more ground. At a lonely stretch, I saw flashing lights ahead and realized a police car was pulled over with someone. As I got closer, I could see they had a disheveled-looking man spread eagle over the hood. A chill ran through me as I recognized him. It was the man from the motel. Speeding past the scene, I debated pulling over to tell the officer about the man, but didn't want to lose momentum or time. I drove on through the night, determined to get home as fast as possible now. Exiting the highway the next afternoon, I stopped at a gas station near my neighborhood. The parking lot was busy, and I felt safer with other people around. Heading inside to pay, I noticed a filthy old car parked off to the side, the same one I had seen the police stop the man in. I practically ran back to my car, locking the doors and peeling out fast. My heart pounded as I checked the mirror constantly, worried he had seen me and might be following. Zooming into my driveway a short while later, I kept the car running while I unloaded, then drove straight to the police station. An officer took down my story and said they would patrol near my house, but without proof it was the same man, there wasn't much they could do. I was on edge being home that night, double-checking locks and startling awake all night long at any noise. In the morning, emotionally drained, I went out to get the mail and noticed disgusting graffiti scrawled on my garage door, crude images, and my name. I drove immediately back to the police station, but they again said there wasn't enough evidence to charge someone. However, a kind officer agreed to follow me home and check around the property to help me feel safer. He inspected the exterior of the house and agreed the graffiti was very concerning. He suggested I stay elsewhere for a few days and offered to collect evidence if the man returned. I'm so thankful nothing worse happened on that road trip, but I'll never travel alone again after coming face to face with that deranged drifter twice. His inexplicable obsession with me still gives me chills. For now, staying with family and contacting home security companies for quotes helps me feel protected. I realized I don't need to understand twisted minds, only stay far away from them. Thanks for listening in. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy these stories. Thank you so much for your support.